If you've ever struggled to find fish, control your swing, or just keep the fly in the zone, these next few minutes are going to fix everything when it comes to swinging flies for steelhead and other species. And this short snippet episode comes from episode 814, Skeena Steelhead Fishing with Brian Niska. I had Brian on the podcast. If you want to listen to the full episode, you can do that right here. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and if you want to listen to the full one here. But today, we're going to get into the top 13 deadliest swing mistakes to avoid in fly fishing that Brian talks about here. All right, let's jump into this and see what we have here. All right, before we get into, just want to remind you to like, subscribe, leave a comment for a chance to get into Wet Fly Swing Pro. You can do that right now as we get into this. And the number 13 mistake to avoid is casting too early and skipping over the fish that are at your feet, that are in the shallow. So the big tip here is don't bomb your cast way out right away. Fish are often near the bank, sometimes in shallow water, especially in big rivers like the Skeena. And Brian says to cover water methodically, start short and then longer as you go. And bonus tip, take 2 steps between casts instead of 5 if you're brand new to it. Remember, depending on water clarity, you're going to want to adjust your speed, but I typically stick with that 2 steps. All right, number 12, read diagonal bars. So the mistake to avoid is ignoring angles and structure and fishing straight across the current. So you want to make sure to fish that fly, and diagonal bars are one thing, especially in a big main stem river where you can cross fish that are swimming up the river. So diagonal bars, Brian says, create migration lanes and travel seams. Cast across those angles so your fly swings across as they move. And bonus tip, on sunny days, look for subtle changes in water. They reveal the diagonal bar edges. So just look for those subtle changes. All right, number 11, find the soft water. The big mistake to avoid is wasting time casting in too fast, featureless middle current. So again, we're not going to be casting just letting it swing. We want to be thinking about where we're casting. The tip here is big rivers hide fish in the edges, inside seams, tail out. So look for current at that walking speed pace and look for those little seams within the bigger run. Bonus tip, drop your fly above soft seams and mend immediately. You'll keep your fly in the zone longer. Number 10, swing control, not speed. The mistake to avoid here is letting your fly rip across too fast. We've kind of mentioned this already. It looks like it's dead and not alive. The tip here is to fish that fly, swing it so you give it life. Slow the swing until your fly barely pulses. When in doubt, add a downstream mend to slow things down. And still, I prefer that hypnotic pulse and speed. All right, number 9, adjust sink tips smartly. So the big mistake to avoid here is changing flies constantly when the problem is actually depth. So don't just think changing flies is going to fix the problem. A lot of times that might be the last thing you need to worry about. The big tip here is change sink tip densities before switching your whole rig. So maybe the 5 and 5, which Brian loves on the Skeena, the T11 is a good baseline to start, but you might switch that up and go a little bit heavier or lighter depending on the situation. So you want to always be tweaking it. And bonus tip, you can mark your tips with Sharpies if you need to, although a lot of tips now come marked what weight they are and sink rate. All right, number 8, mistake to avoid, focusing on long casts instead of adjusting the sink rate. We've just said it, we're reinforcing this. The tip here, the right depth matters far more than your cast. If you're not ticking the bottom occasionally, you might be above the fish. So we don't want to be hitting the bottom at all, all the time, but occasionally it's okay to feel that bottom, let you know that you're down on the Skeena and you are using sink tips for the most part. All right, number 7, match the mood, not the hatch. So the mistake to avoid here is thinking steelhead care about exact imitations, and they really care about the profile and the tone. So you don't have to have that perfect fly. So the tip is bright water, go dark. Dirty water, go big and flashy. Adjust your fly based on clarity and fish behavior, not on some perfect fly. Bonus tip here is bring 1 dark fly, 1 bright fly, and 1 contrast pattern, and test each before changing your setup. All right, before we get into the last 6 here, just want to give a shout out. Make sure to leave a comment below. We're going to choose somebody who, if you leave a comment right now and subscribe and like our channel, you're going to get access to get into Wet Fly Swing Pro. And this is where you get a chance to win trips, get access to the community, and take everything the next step further. All right, number 6, mistake to avoid here is constantly second guessing your fly choice instead of fishing it well. So we're sticking on this fly thing again. So there's no magic pattern. Brian says you need to trust what you're fishing and fish it. So pick that fly, fish it hard, have confidence. Confidence in steelhead fishing is huge. And a bonus tip here is pre-tie 3 to 5 copies of your confidence pattern. And so you don't get stuck out there without the fly that's been working. Number 5 mistake to avoid, we're getting closer to the number 1 mistake to avoid, is using long thin leaders that kill depth control. So what you want to do is use 3-foot leaders, 12 to 15 pound tippet. On the Skeena, 20 pound is what they use there. And this will allow you to turn those flies over more properly. And bonus tip here is use a short butt section of Maxima fluorocarbon for durability. So we all know Maxima is definitely a good brand, and you can't go wrong with Maxima leader. All right, number 4, fish water, not the clock. So the mistake to avoid here is leaving prime runs midday because you think it's over. And the big tip here is in the Skeena, you are not going to get rewarded for super early risers there. The fish wake up as the water warms because you're up north. Now, again, if you're down south in some waters, this might be a little bit different. And there are times when we do get up early at the crack of dawn. But for the Skeena system specifically, you do not have to necessarily. Bonus tip, track water temperatures when it climbs a couple degrees. That might be your activation window to know when to go for it. All right, we're getting closer. Number 3, mistake to avoid in swinging flies is charging into the middle when visibility drops. So visibility is getting worse. What do? Fish the edges first. That's where steelhead slide during higher flows. So when the things are coming up, it's getting a little turbid and kind of ugly out there. Start on the edges, and you can pick fish up there. A bonus tip here is use a short, heavy tip and black and purple flies to stand out in dirty water. So again, dirty water, purple flies, and black are good. All right, 2 more. Here we go. This is the number 2 mistake to avoid when swinging flies with a focus on steelhead is fishing aggressively in clear water like it's still stained. So the opposite here now, if you're in fishing really clear water, you want to really calm things down a little bit. You can downsize everything, use smaller flies, use lighter tips, slower swings. So when it's really clear, you can use actually slower speeds. And then the bonus tip here is wear dull colors and use longer leaders. Stealth pays. So again, this is an easy tip when it's clear out. Definitely be a little stealthier. And this is about, again, what we're talking about, adaptingly constant. This is the theme of this whole thing, is adapting as we go. So the number 1 mistake to avoid is fishing the same rig all day, no matter what conditions do. So you can't just go out there and fish one rig all day. You've got to be tweaking it. You got to be mixing it up. And you want to adjust on every run, sink rate, color, angle, pace, and don't just stick to one form where you got to mix it up until you find the right one. Bonus tip here is keep a small notepad with you. Here's the bonus tip. Keep a small notepad and keep track of in a journal of what went on that day so you can remember it. All right, so I am going to wrap that up here today. That is the 13 biggest swing mistakes to avoid when on the water. We had a heavy theme here of flies and being able to adjust things. I hope these are good. If you want to check out the full episode, you can go to episode 814 of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I hope this one helped you out. Drop a comment in below if you have your favorite fly that you love to use. I want to hear what that is. Put the comment in there. And if you want to check out the full episode, like we said, 814 is the best place to go. Thanks for checking in today, and we'll see you on that next video, and we will talk to you soon.